Hey everyone, and welcome to Adobe Live. I'm Flynn. It's great to see you, and I'm here with Johanna from Chat. Hey Johanna, how are you doing?
Hello. I'm very good, thank you. And yourself, Flynn?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for joining us IRL. This is incredible.
Yeah.
For those of you regular streamers, Johanna is our amazing moderator, and she's always around getting things done on Adobe Live. So we've had a last minute change to the schedule, and actually Joe and I have been talking about doing this for quite a long time, and so we've just kind of slotted this in where we thought we'd spend just a little bit of time with you guys today. We're going to have a look at some of the amazing artists that are coming up on Adobe Live very soon, and we're also interested in your feedback. And what else? And also your questions as well. And we always
Yeah.
talk about all these live streams that we can do, and all these people in Australia and New Zealand and around here that we can get on, and different types of content we can do. So now's an opportunity, especially for you regular folk. Festus, hey Festus, how you doing? R&B, it's great to see you. Hello Alice, Raphael as well, and hey Dee, how you doing? So we'd love to hear from you as we're going along. We're only here for a short amount of time today, and so yeah, if you have any questions about Adobe Live, about some of the guests that are coming up, some suggestions of what you might want to see, today's the day for that kind of thing. But before we do, we have summoned Johanna from Chat
Yes.
Moderation Land. A wild Johanna has appeared, and it would be really cool if maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, so people can get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, awesome. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I would say that I am a professional generalist in terms of my creative fields, I guess. I do a lot of illustration work, some photography. Basically, I like to try essentially everything.
Right.
Lately, I've been doing a lot of Adobe Dimension, getting back into Fresco, which has been very fun. But overall, about me, Viking living in Australia, mixed feelings about the weather on some days, but yeah,
A
happy to
Viking
be
living
here.
in Australia.
Yes.
Can you clarify that a little bit more?
Yes. So to clarify, I was born in Sweden and came here when I was about 9 years old. So that's why you sometimes might be able to hear an accent, but um, years and years of just trying my best to speak the Australian English language,
Mm.
the accent isn't so much there anymore.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I don't think I hear it all that often, but every now and then it'll pop up.
Mm.
That's cool. And we actually work on something else together. So before Adobe Live, before we were working on Adobe Live, we were actually working on this little bad boy,
Yeah.
which is a podcast that we both contribute to. So Australian Design Radio. If you haven't seen it, I guess this is like, after how many episodes of Adobe Live, this is my first plug. It's
Yeah,
my
I
first
think
plug
so.
for my own stuff, right? Check it out. Yeah, this is us. There's
So humble.
122 episodes. So humble. There's 122 episodes at the moment. It's slowed down a little bit. You guys might recognize Andrew Hotradell. And so he actually came to Australia just before lockdown. And that's the first time I met Andrew, and I saw him streaming. And then we connected, and then he came to Adobe in Sydney, and we sat around and we had a really good chat. So if you're a fan of Andrew, which you should certainly be, he's on here. And I guess, so Johanna and I worked together on this with some other amazing people. And some of the artists that we've had on here, you might recognize some of these people. So for those that have
Indeed.
seen the UK stream, you may know Craig Black. So he's come to Australia a couple of times, and we did an episode with him. And there's just like quite a lot of amazing Australian. It's usually Australian designers, or it's like when we've gone to like Adobe Max or like a big event here in Australia, and some international folks have come across. But if you're interested in finding out about some interesting people like in our neck of the woods, T. Uglow, very interesting person. She works with Google in Australia here. She's phenomenal. But yeah, so check that out if that's something that you're interested in. If you're doing the podcasting at the moment, maybe Maybe you are, maybe you're not. I think streaming is up and podcasting is down at the moment because we've lost all the
Yeah.
commuters.
It's funny how that happens. I think it's people still want to hear someone else talking, but now they'd rather see them talking and their face, not just listening to the audio too, I guess, for company.
Right. Not just audio mode. Yeah.
Mm.
Totally true. Totally true. So we thought we might have a look at some of the artists that are coming up this week. So regulars of Adobe Live will recognize this scruffy haired young man. So Bill Hope is coming back on tomorrow. And we thought we'd have a quick look at some of his amazing work because we get to see the quick version of Bill's work, but he does some phenomenal illustrations. Like, look at the detail. Like going on.
Yeah, it's incredible. And just to think that, like, this is what he does sort of professionally, and like knowing like what's the speed of this when we know how quickly he can whip up ideas on the stream. It's really cool to see like when he does have a lot of time to work on something, what he comes up with.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. And also this like completely different like style of work. Like, look at how contrasting these two skill sets would be from the outside. Like, they could almost be completely different artists. And it's only
absolutely.
It's only really sometimes when you look at things like the rabbit or this like kind of running Lego dude, where you can start where you really see his style like coming through.
Yeah, it's like, yes, that's a Bill.
That's a Bill Hope, yeah, or this kind of like crazy, like device stuff going on. Yeah, it's pretty.
You can kind of see it in the line work though, that it's still a Bill Hope piece, just in this
previous one.
Yeah, even in both, because his line work is very brush, sort of adjacent, I suppose. So even in like the hand or the portrait as well, you still get that Bill Hope flavor, I find, in the line work.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And Bill Hope actually works for, he's repped by Jackie Winter as well, which you've seen that name pop up a bunch of times.
Yes.
You know, like especially lately, like we've been teaming up with them to bring some phenomenal artists across, and they rep some of the best artists definitely in Australia and around the world. I actually met Bill from when he was doing this sort of thing. So what he's doing here is at an event. I don't know what event this is. He used to do this a lot. I don't think he's doing it as much these days, where he was doing the live scribing, which is much more similar to what we'll be doing tomorrow, which is where he's sort of just sketching like insanely fast, like kind of from memory in his really quirky style. And Creative Mornings is something that I think a lot of people are familiar with. Creative Mornings in Sydney is something that I worked on for a while, and that's where we met Bill. And it was great. The only problem was that we set Bill up with this like second TV next to the TV that the presenter was using, but everyone was watching Bill.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah. No, it was like mesmerizing because you'd look away for 2 seconds and suddenly like half of the page would already be filled up with illustrations. It was impressive.
Yeah, it was literally actually a problem because of how how distracting he could be because of how good he was. But yeah, of course, just a phenomenal artist.
Which for him is a great problem to have.
I think so.
He's
yeah,
so good.
I think that's like the height of live scribing, to be like taking over. It's almost like someone doing sign language, and they're just like more entertaining than the person that's talking because of how into it they are. That's cool.
It reminds me a lot of the Eurovision Song Contest when they introduced the Aslan interpreters and just really how very much into the music they got, which obviously you appreciate it, and I'm sure everyone using the sign, so the Aslan as well would really appreciate, but unfortunately can be a bit distracting.
Yeah. Have you seen the rappers? Have you seen it when like someone's at like a rap concert or something and they're like signing the rap? It's just amazing. Absolutely incredible.
The best.
So what we're doing on Tuesday, just before we move on to the next artist that's coming up, on Tuesday, the theme is Everything is Alive. So that's a sneak peek for you regulars out there in chat. Everything is alive. So we'll be taking live suggestions of what we can kind of turn into real life things. Like imagine is it? Oh, I've got a mind blank. What's the Disney one where like all the cups and saucers are live?
Beauty and the Beast?
Beauty and the Beast. That's the one. Haven't had my coffee yet.
Oh man, still I'm live and still coming in with the references.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, we might move on because we've seen a lot of Bill before, but here's someone that we haven't seen before. I'm so excited about Lilian. So Lilian is repped by Jackie Winter as well, and I think you can just see from the artwork that we're seeing behind us, like how incredibly talented she is. Spent a very short amount of time chatting about coming on Adobe Live and what we could do, and I just had a great time talking to her. She's incredible. Just sort of, we were just trying to chat about, whether she's going to show off her work in Fresco or in Illustrator or Photoshop. She's doing a little bit of both. So it's going to be heaps of fun. And just watching, she's one of those people, a bit like Bill, like just watching her work, like just doing these incredibly confident, quick lines to very quickly create a composition is scary good. So let's have a look at some of her work. So what would you call this, Johanna? Like, would you call this, like, I've heard people kind of talk about spot illustration like quite a lot.
Yeah, so I mean, I would call this, it is obviously spot, but it's definitely more editorial aligned, and that's generally where you would get the spot illustration from, because you'd have a main article, and then maybe on the sides or just introducing the article, there's just one illustration, kind of like how all the illustrations in a book, for example, if there's just one page and has an illustration, but then the rest of the book, or like then you go back to the text, that would be a spot illustration in a book as well. So yeah, you are correct with this being spot illustration, and I would also then say that it has an editorial lean,
right,
as well.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, every now and then I get it right,
Yeah, of course.
But just some incredible work. Seen this like kind of style like becoming much more popular, like over the last couple of years, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting how obviously you have the patient zero. If you pardon my example, you have like the first person that creates something in a style, and then it's really interesting to see how different creatives then take on the new style and adapt it within their own, and just how something as simple as, okay, we're going to do over dramatized arms or ligaments on these people illustrations, and then how that just becomes a trend across like websites and apps and really everything. It's incredible what power a nice or a common style can have.
Yeah, a bit of Viking almost tried to come out just then. That was great. just as you said it might. Now I'm going to be listening every time.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, it comes out in certain words that I've just not quite Australianized.
RB wants to know what pen you're using. I think we can hear
pen I'm using,
scratching occasionally.
Oh right, yeah. Unfortunately, that's not a pen. That's a mouse. So always a chat mod. I am popping some links from what we're talking about into the chat as well. Awesome. So that's what you're hearing.
Awesome. Yeah, I think like especially this sort of thing, like I think for companies to try to be much more human as well, I think is that big one. Like you can remember, you might not remember, but like, yeah, 5 years ago, like it was just all about like silly names mashed together and like hoodies and all that sort of stuff. And I think we've all kind of evolved a little bit from wanting a little bit more from businesses to talk a little bit more human and a little bit more direct. Yeah.
And it's all about the tote bag now.
It's all about the totes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh gosh, I have way too many.
We should move on because actually we're not here.
Yes.
We're not here for too long. But yeah, so Lilian is up on Wednesday. It's going to be phenomenal. So Yeah, I know it's going to be such a great one. So so check that out. And she's on Behance as well, so you guys can just follow her right over there. And then just very quickly, we've also got Victoria. So Victoria's in the UK. I don't know how all these Australians are getting to the UK right now. I thought we were in lockdown. What's going on? But yeah, Victoria is in the UK at the moment, and so we're doing a 6 p.m. Live stream here in Sydney, which is 9 a.m. in the UK. So it's like totally different time for us. Yeah, we've been wanting to have Victoria on for a long time. This is just a little clip of her at Max last year. Do you remember when we all used to be able to travel? So that was
it was the best.
That was when Victoria went over there from Australia and was live on the Behance live stage, showing what she does in XD. Yeah, so she's coming up. She's coming on, and it's going to be heaps of fun. I love playing around in XD. There's not as much XD content, I think, happening here in Asia Pacific as there is like in the UK and also in the US. So I'm pretty pumped, pretty excited to spend some time with Victoria.
Yeah, it'll be a nice new thing for the chat as well to see not the usual photography or illustration or even motion stuff.
Exactly. And she does like a lot of illustration, and she's got like a design qualification. The reason she's in the UK, she's at Hyper Island as well. So like,
that's right. Yeah.
She's an achiever. One of those very talented young people. It's like, oh my gosh. So yeah. And then kind of last person I kind of want to bring up is Stephen Grace. He loves
the wonderful Stephen Grace.
Wonderful Stephen. So he works for a design agency, which is also one of my favorite group of people in the world, Christopher Doyle and Co. And you'll learn a little bit more about Stephen. He's actually coming up next week, I think. But I thought we'd just like quickly have a dip into CD and Co. I would definitely bias, but I'd also say the best design and branding agency in Australia. So if you're interested in that side of things, definitely check out their work. From their creative writing to their design, it's world class. So let's see if we've got a couple of selected projects here we could check out. So they do a lot of work for like Spotify. It's just incredibly intelligent design.
I'm obviously extremely biased as well. I think they were probably one of the first agencies or studios here in Australia I really just absolutely fell in love with and became kind of the gold standard to aspire to when I was doing a little bit more traditional graphic design work.
Yeah, exactly. And it's always interesting talking about branding branding in identity design and graphic design with an international audience, from how we all consider design. Like I remember some friends from our community were judging D&AD, and they had a lot of trouble judging the branding category because people from France considered branding to be much more like identity design, whereas some people over in the UK considered it's all part of this system. And so from an Australian perspective, that might have been more, that kind of borders into like system and environmental design. And it was quite hard because of the definitions of the language were quite different, which made it very difficult to say, well, that's the best branding one and that's the best identity one because of the language. But yeah, I would say.
Yeah, and obviously, you go.
I was just going to say, I would say this is design and branding from our perspective.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. And speaking of, I guess, lost that segue. I also wanted to throw into the chat. So Christopher Doyle Co recently did a poster, actually. So it's a bit of Adobe Live show notes. So they're doing a calendar poster, and it's basically the 2020 revised edition. So I'll put the link in the chat, but it's a comment on the current loss of like 2-3 months that we've had, and then I'm pretty sure that the proceeds, let me just double check before I say this on live.
They definitely go to charity.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. No, I just wanted to make sure that I got the charity right. So that all the proceeds are going to, going to Project O. I believe it's either Project O or Project Zero, and that's intended. So it's an initiative for driving change for young women in rural, regional, and high needs communities in Australia affected by family violence. So
it's a great cause.
It's a very important cause, exactly. And it's one way of owning some Christopher Doyle Co. memorabilia too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have a favorite piece from Christopher Doyle, you think?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be up here, but well, maybe it is. So it's a classic. This is actually one of my favorites, this stuff. I remember talking to Chris about this and the team, and they were talking about how like this is one of the one things that people write to them about and talk to them about.
Right.
And they love it, but they're like, but it's so simple. Like it's like one of the most simple things they've ever done. And they're like, do you have any idea how much work we put into like all this like and all these other projects? Just this like the simplicity of this is the one where he says this is the one that like other creative directors will come along and say, oh wow, I wish I thought of that. That's really nice. Like this particular project. The other one that I absolutely love, which the reason I think it might not be on here is because it's much more about Chris, and I know he doesn't want to make it all about him. He wants it to be more about the studio, but he's very popular and is very funny and is an interesting character. It's hard not to talk about Chris all the time. It's not on here, so I'll have to tell you about it. So it's he did brand identity for himself, like a brand identity magazine for himself.
I knew this is what you were going to bring up.
It was just so funny and so different. Like it got picked up all around the world at the time when he did it. It's very old now, but it was brand identity guidelines for himself. And so he was like, and you'd have like create a brand identity guideline book, and you would have, like do's and don'ts and everything. Like he'd be wearing a hoodie with the hood up, and then it'd be like, no, this is a don't. And like how far away people are supposed to be away from him in the office and stuff like that. And like color palettes and everything like that. Something that you could throw together like as an Instagram thing in an afternoon these days. I mean, it was beautifully designed, of course. But back then he created a magazine for it and like printed them all out and got them done. So it just it's this really interesting artifact. And I have one. It's one of my many design artifacts that I have that I treasure.
Wow.
So yeah.
Incredible.
So check it out. So Stephen's coming on. So Stephen works with Christopher Doyle at Christopher Doyle Co, senior designer there, and he's going to come and hang out with us, and he's going to tell us more and more about what they're up to. And then we don't have a lot of time left, so I just want to shout out our Discord.
6 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, 2 minutes actually. This is where you're normally telling me, hey, we've only got like 2
minutes. Oh
yes,
that's right.
So jump into our Discord, come say hi. We're going to hang out a little bit more in a bit. Oh, there's a quick question for you, Johanna. What's your favorite part in creative design?
I think it's the being able to tell stories, really, that you have this idea and that your idea that you create can resonate with so many different people. So it's a bit cheesy and a bit sappy, but the togetherness of design and how it really can bring people together.
Oh, I really like that. That's a very sweet sentiment. Thanks for the question, R&B. And
thank you.
Yeah, so we'll be here tomorrow with Bill Hope, and so we hope you can join us. Thanks for hanging out and indulging us a little bit, so we could have a little bit of a chat to you. Jump over to Discord if that's your thing. Johanna and I are going to jump over there right now. So thanks for hanging out, and Johanna, thanks for jumping out of chat and saying hello.
No worries. IRL. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. See you guys. Have a great day.
Bye.